saying, like stating from my point of view, I think like it really helps if you're, more of a like open-minded like person. Like for example, in my case, well, I would say that, like I really like, connecting with people, like, with people from all over the world. So I think that really helped me, and, of course still helps me, to get to understand, like the language, the culture of a, specific country, like, where the, the language is spoken.
All right.
Sure.
Hey, Almat, how are you doing today? How's it going?
Hello, Ryan. Nice. Good, good. What about you?
Yeah, no complaints. I just came from teaching a class, right? So I've taught a few classes
Great.
today. You are
Yes,
interview
me too.
number 15, the final interviewee in
Oh,
this series.
ah,
But yeah, it's
all
great
right.
to see you. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing very great. Thank you. It's first of all, let me tell you that it's a big honor to be here with you, being an interview, like, it's such an honor, to be interviewed, by you, like here, and, having some chatting with you about languages, about teaching, and about everything. I'm super excited. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I have so many questions to ask you because you really
Sure.
made my job easy as an interviewer, because this is a skill that I'm trying to develop at, like, being a better interviewer, right? As time goes on. And now that I'm on, number 15, I realized you made my life so much easier by giving me so much information. You sent me an email, you told me
Oh
all
yeah.
about yourself.
Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind, for people who are watching, Almat, would you mind just letting them know who you are? Present yourself.
Sure, of course, with pleasure. So my name is Almat. I'm from Kazakhstan. So as you can see, from the background of Ryan, it's also another, big pleasure, big honor, to see, the flag, of your, home country where you come from. So it's really nice. Yes, so I come from Kazakhstan, from a city called Almaty. That's the, biggest city of Kazakhstan. So yes, I was born and I was raised in that city, from Almaty, Kazakhstan. And currently I live in Budapest, Hungary. So I've been living here basically for more than 2 years, for my study purposes. Yes, so it's been like almost, I would say, 1 month since I teach online. So, teaching languages online. And yeah, so I think that's the reason why I'm here, to also have some discussion with you regarding this topic.
Days, all right, let's dive in. So first of all, your studies. What are you studying in Budapest?
Yes, so basically, with my studies, it's actually also a bit of, separate topic, I would say. So like here I study, this is my third year, and I study in the Faculty of Chemical Engineering and Biotechnology. So basically like my studies like specialize in, in chemistry, in engineering. So, basically this is what I, chose to study when I was graduating my high school, because, at that time, I didn't even have, a single idea of, that I'm going to be dedicating, my future life for the languages, for the teaching and the learning languages and everything. So, that was kind of a, like, quick decision, I would say, because I didn't really know what to do, what to study, how I'm going to, move on, with my life further. So that was, yes, kind of a decision. And yes, so that's it.
What a mixture, like biotechnology, chemical engineering, and now like
Yes,
teaching languages.
in
That's
language,
that's
yes, crazy,
wild,
isn't it?
man. Yeah, do you think that
Yes.
your scientific knowledge, do you think this could at all like help you with your teaching on iTalki?
This is actually, very good question. Like the things that I'm not really sure if it's gonna contribute that much, but like there's one thing that I'm pretty sure of, like, that is probably gonna help me a lot is, I would say, the self-discipline, because, like during my university studies, like, there are like many subjects, which you don't really find interesting. For example, it might be too much theory, and, maybe you don't really get along with like your teachers, maybe like, with your classmates. So, sometimes it might be a bit, I would say, hectic, tough. So I think in that sense, that's really helped me a lot, with self-discipline to, try to organize myself, like hour by hour, day by day, like, trying to managing everything in time. So I think in that sense, that helps me a lot in my, like teaching and everything. that I
Yeah,
do.
how do you do it? Because I mean, I have a background with learning languages, and I know you are a polyglot of polyglots. And
Yeah.
last year I was learning, you know, 6 languages at the same time. And like right now,
Wow.
I have 2 jobs, and I'm doing my master's degree, and I'm doing YouTube and like all this, you know, creating content. And but I
Yes,
have to say, learning 6 languages at the same time, man, was
it's
more mentally taxing than this lifestyle could ever be. So I want to know how
unbelievable.
you're able to study and teach and also learn and maintain the languages that you're learning.
Well, this is actually very good and interesting question. Like, the thing is that, well, let's say like if we dive a little bit into, my language learning history. So basically, everything started in April 2020, if I recall correctly. So, basically when the pandemic with COVID-19 like began. So at that time, like I remember I used to live, in the dormitory of my university. So at the time, everything was, tough, like complicated, like it was a kind of a, like, world chaos. So like I didn't really know, like, what to do. So at the time I remember, like I have a close friend of mine from Argentina. So like, we, starting from, that time we used to spend, lots of time, together. So that was, kind of an interesting thing because, like at the time I somehow started to, like get interested into languages, like because, I remember that once like he said that, he was using some application, I think, like Hello Talk, Tandem, like community, to find a language learning partner and, trying to practice the language. So he always used to, mention those kind of things. And I was like, wow, maybe how cool it would be, to be able to speak in the language of your, like close friend or even your, I don't know, maybe your spouse or for example, some other, foreigner. So I thought, that would be a cool idea. And, as you know, like, as he's from Argentina, his native language was Spanish. So, at the time I told myself, okay, so let's make it, kind of a challenge, like, as, also the pandemic, COVID-19 began and, like many people right now are doing many things like, online. So I thought, okay, like, let's start with, something new. So I told myself, okay, from now on, I'm gonna learn Spanish. And, basically everything, let's say, went on like starting from exactly that moment when I told myself, when I promised myself that, I'm gonna learn this language fluently. And in the future, I'll be able to have a fluent conversation with a friend of mine, and not only with him, but with also other people from all over the world. So yes, that was kind of a pushing moment for me to start learning languages and finally to get that passion for languages, for learning languages. And later, for example, these days that turned, let's say, kind of a got modified into teaching languages to people from all over the world.
Great stuff. So, like, my original question was how you're able to do
Yeah.
it, right? So I guess one of the ways
Yes,
is with passion, right? And you know, keeping the
sure, of
motivation to
course.
actually
Yes,
do the
yes.
language learning. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Like the thing is that I would say it's more of like habit, maybe I would say, because the thing is that, for example, these days, like I don't really think too much that, like, oh, for example, right now I'm gonna do something, for, I don't know, French, then like after 2 hours I'm gonna do something for, I don't know, Spanish, then after that something to German and so on. So it's not like it doesn't work really that way. Like, for example, like as it became kind of a habit. So for example, I just take my, like, for example, phone, like I put my like earphones, and for example I start to listen to something in the language. So that became kind of a habit, because for example when I don't know do some like ordinary, like stuff, I would say, like for example, I don't know, like cooking, or like like cleaning my room, my apartment. So in those moments I already like kind of a, I don't know, get exposure to the language. So I kind of use my dead time, as it's also called in language learning world. So like it's more of a habit, and I don't really feel like I'm learning and kind of maintaining my language. Is just became a kind of part of my life. So based on those habits that I've, let's say, acquired during the last time, it's just this is the way how I maintain the language, mostly by listening to something. And of course time by time, if I have free time, I could also do some revisions, like some grammar, like vocabulary revisions during my free time. But yes, like usually like I try to spend, like allocate my time like equally between the languages that I already speak.
That's great. Yeah. This is actually completely unplanned, but this is
Yes.
perfect how things have lined up with these interviews because the person who I
Yes.
was just speaking to earlier today,
Mm.
his name is Kenny. He is from Belgium and he teaches 5 languages
Mhm.
on iTalki.
Mm.
You know, to speak to one polyglot and then another one, it's really nice how, you know, the series has shifted from teaching not only to learning, but it has encompassed learning. So we will speak about
Exactly.
language teaching today because you are an iTalki teacher, but I think it's a
Yes.
really great skill and a really good source of information to hear from successful language learners. Because for me, whenever I'm having a bad day with language learning or a bad week or
Mm.
a bad month, the first thing I always do is actually look at other successful language learners online, and like that's like really the thing that gives me the
Exactly, like
fire.
that kind of gives you a push that, you know, like if they can do it, why can't you do it? So you also have the possibility, you know, the opportunity to do so, right?
100%. So I just want to know from you, because you seem like a very friendly person actually, and you were
No, I
talking
think so.
about and you're talking about your friend from Argentina and how you're just like,
Yeah.
all right, let's try to do it, let's try to learn Spanish, it's the pandemic.
Yes,
So
sure,
I'd
sure.
like to know, do you think that being friendly or personable or charismatic has
Mm.
an impact on how well you're able to learn a language or teach a language? Or does that not have an effect?
Well, you know, like stating from my point of view, I think like it really helps if you're, you know, more of a like open-minded like person. Like for example, in my case, well, I would say that, you know, like I really like, you know, connecting with people, like, you know, with people from all over the world. So I think that really helped me, and you know, of course still helps me, you know, to get to understand, you know, like the language, the culture of a, you know, specific country, like, you know, where the, you know, the language is spoken. So I think yes, that in my case that really helped me a lot, because you know, as you know, I was always, you know, eager to get to know, you know, more people from all over the world, from different countries, especially, you know, like the language that I was learning, always trying to seek for language partners. So I think I would say yes, that it actually helps you a lot if you're more of a kind of a open-minded, friendly, enthusiastic person. If you're always eager to learn new things and meet new people, I think yes, that is, I would say, like has a very key role, like, you know, in your future language learning success, I would say.
Great. Yeah, because just harkening back to you talking about Tandem, about HelloTalk. I mean, I've spent a
Exactly.
lot of time on those apps, and a lot of people who want to learn languages do spend a lot of time on those apps. And I mean, now you're a
Yes.
teacher, but maybe we could take a pause and you could just tell us which languages do you teach and which languages are you learning?
Well, that's also a good question. So currently, let's say, like, you know, at this moment, basically, you know, it's not been, you know, too much time that I'm teaching language. So actually, like today's Tuesday. So basically, it's been almost, I would say, 3 weeks that, you know, I'm teaching on iTalki. So like tomorrow, basically, it's gonna be exactly 3 weeks when I got, you know, my first students. So like up to this day, like I teach 5 languages. So on iTalki, I teach 4 languages. So those are Kazakh, my first native language, Russian, my second native language, English, and Spanish. And I also teach French, but I teach it on to some students on another platform, which is called Profi. I think I mentioned it like in the email that I sent you. So yes, I also like, you know, teach to some people from Kazakhstan who want to learn, you know, French with me. So for now, I'm teaching these 5 languages, and in the coming future, like you know, I'm eager. I hope to teach also Italian and Portuguese, which are sixth and seventh language that I speak.
Oh,
Yes.
fantastic. So, speaking about Spanish, how were you able to prove your proficiency with Spanish? Did you take the DELE exam, or was there a different way you were able to prove it?
Well, you know, basically like, well, in case of iTalki, like, you know, as I'm a community tutor, so basically, you know, they didn't really ask, you know, an official certificate from me that, you know, you know, I learned that I know, you know, the Spanish language proficiently. But the thing is that, like, I remember a couple of months ago, like, I took some online tests, you know, like, for example, like if you write on on the internet, like, you know, for example, Spanish tests like online, and maybe, for example, like you kind of bump into some websites where you can check, you know, like the level of your language knowledge. So basically, I checked my level in those ones, and I got C2, so which is like proficient level to, you know, like to, so that means that you can already, you know, teach the language for beginners or even for intermediates who, you know, need some help, maybe to refresh their knowledge or to learn some new things. But it was not like a professional thing. But in the coming future, I'm really planning to take, you know, those official international exams, like as you said, DELE for Spanish or for some other languages as well.
Exactly. DELF for French, for example.
DELF for French, exactly. Or CILS also for Italian, CILS, yes.
Nice. Okay. Great. Cool. Wow. This is great. So I've spoken to quite a few students this week about being a non-native speaker of a language. And this is one of the things that really prompted this video series, but it's turned into so much more than that. I'm so happy about it.
Yes.
But, you know, one of the things that I really wanted to hear from the horse's mouth is based on non-native speakerism, or sorry, native speakerism. Now, we've spoken a lot about English native speakerism. You teach Russian, you teach Spanish, you teach French. So I would like to know your experience. Like, I guess you are a new teacher, but you've probably done a lot of research. So what do you think are some of the differences between teaching Spanish as a non-native speaker versus teaching, for example, French, or teaching English as a non-native speaker? Are the challenges, are the perceptions and misconceptions and assumptions the same, or are they different in any way?
Well, you know, like, for example, like if you consider from, you know, the language itself, like, I mean, like, you know, the structure of the language itself, you know, like from that part, maybe, of course, like it might be different. So for example, you know, like if you consider English itself, it, you know, belongs to a Germanic family, like as one says. But if you, for example, consider like the language like Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, like Catalan, you know, those belong to Romanian languages. So like regarding the structure of the languages, yes, of course, you know, there are some differences. So like whenever you teach a language, so for example, let's say right now, if it's in English, then of course, you know, it's like kind of a, you know, like in advance that I'm going to teach English. So there are, you know, like I would say, you know, it kind of happens like subconsciously. So like you already know, okay, so like there are these kind of things, like this kind of, you know, like for example, words like vocab, like grammar. And when you, for example, move to another language, like you also know that, okay, so in this one, like you don't need to, like, you know, mix up the language, like instead it works this way. So I think, yes, in that sense, like talking from the, you know, like structure of a language in general, like, yes, I think I noticed the differences. But on the other hand, I think it also has something to do with the, you know, like with the culture, with the countries where the language is spoken in general, you know, because for example, like, you know, I believe that, for example, when I speak Spanish, like, you know, it's like, I feel like I'm more of kind of a open-minded, more of a, you know, enthusiastic, like, you know, cheerful person, really, like, you know, that happens to me a lot because, you know, I have many friends, many acquaintances from, you know, South American countries, from Spain, and, you know, like basically all the relationships that I have with, you know, people from those countries, like, you know, it's always like, you know, lots of fun, lots of, you know, joking and everything. So whenever I teach Spanish to, you know, to people who want to learn Spanish, like, you know, it, I think always goes like, you know, this way, like fun way, you know, just time by time throwing some jokes and some like funny moments. So I think, yeah, this is another thing that I also noticed, you know, regarding, you know, like the teaching of the language, of a particular language. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like a more fun person while I'm speaking Spanish as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's speak about your students so far then. So you've only been on there for a few months. Maybe tell us, how many bookings have you gotten? And where are your students from? Which languages are your students learning, by the way?
Yes, so talking about iTalki, so up to now, so basically, you know, I was accepted, you know, like as a community tutor on iTalki on 14th of March, like, you know, I will never forget that date. So like on 14th of March, I remember at 5 a.m., I think, or 5:30, something like that, I got a, you know, I got an invitation, like I would say I got an email, like saying that, you know, my application was pre-approved, like, to be a community tutor on iTalki. So like I, like submitted my document, like I watched all the lessons, like, like for teachers. So basically starting from 14th of March, I'm a tutor on iTalki, but I got my first students after 2 days. So that means on 16th of March, I got my first 2 students on iTalki. I also remember like my first student, she's from China, but actually she's ethnically, she's Kazakh, because like she was, I mean, although she was born in China, but her parents, her grandparents, so basically she has Kazakh roots. So she's, let's say, I wouldn't say like kind of learning, but she's improving her Kazakh because she already speaks Kazakh. She speaks very well. And we are just, trying to, let's say, brush up, on her, Kazakh, like by some more advanced vocabulary, some more advanced phrases, to speak like a native speaker. And another student, she's from the United States, like, my second student, like on my first day teaching on iTalki, she's from the United States. And well, it's still quite difficult to believe that, but she told me that she speaks 27 languages and she's only 15 years old. Can you believe this? 15 years old, she told me that she speaks 27 languages. I was literally, mesmerized. Like I said, like, if it's true, then I don't have any words, like, this is incredible.
Even if it's
I think I
not
don't hear it. Yeah.
So sorry, I keep muting myself. Even if it's not just to want to, like, just to aspire to that as a 15-year-old is incredible. I think one thing that I've spoken about before, how incredibly inspirational a lot of the students are on iTalki, and how a lot of people are very certified, they are very professional, they have PhDs, and they have like businesses. But I actually haven't given enough credit to the kids, because honestly, some of the teenagers I've taught are like learning by their own, like they want to learn. They are the ones choosing to learn. Their parents are sponsoring them to do it.
Exactly.
I teach some polyglot teenagers who just really like language learning. So, but 27 languages is just absolutely incredible.
Absolutely incredible. Yes, like, still, like, it's quite difficult to believe that. But when she told me, like, and when I checked her profile, like, she shared, some like contacts, like some pages where, like she stated that she speaks all those languages. I was absolutely, crushed with that fact. So yes, that was something incredible. But yes, so regarding, like, with respect to that young polyglot, I would say, so she's also learning Kazakh. And by the way, I also felt so good because she told me that Kazakh is one of the favorite languages that she's like currently learning. So she told me that she's learning Kazakh, Vietnamese, and I think it was Ukrainian, if I'm not wrong. So like there were 3 languages, and she told me that Kazakh is one of the favorite language that she's learning. So like after hearing that, I felt so happy, like so honored, that I was eager to help her with everything that she, where she needs help. So yes, that was about my first students on my first day on iTalki.
That's amazing. So to hear that you've gotten so much, like a few bookings for Kazakh is also really impressive as well.
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Kazakhstan switch over from using the Cyrillic
alphabet
to the Roman alphabet a few years ago?
Actually, yes, like it was stated that they were about to change from Cyrillic alphabet to Latin alphabet, but the thing is that I think they kind of like put it off, like they kind of postponed it like to later time. So I think they said like maybe by 2025 they're gonna try, at least try to implement it, like into the real life. But nowadays they still use the Cyrillic alphabet. Even I don't know the Roman, like the Latin alphabet of Kazakh. Like if you ask me, it's just something crazy. Like I would rather support the usual Cyrillic alphabet that we use, our own alphabet. Yeah.
Awesome, great. Yeah, I was just curious if that would change the way that you teach your language, but I guess that's something that's like coming in the future, and who knows when it's actually going to be set in stone and going to be picked up by people as well.
Sure.
Right? So
of course
that's okay. We'll you could keep us up to date on that as well. And
sure.
If we sit down again, hopefully you'll have more information about language learning and language teaching in general. And maybe you'll be an Italian teacher and
I hope so. Hopefully one day
as well.
Yes, exactly.
All right,
hopefully.
we have to talk about this other platform, Profi, because
Yeah.
I understand that a lot of viewers use different platforms because, you know,
Yes.
it's not easy being self-employed online, right? And
Sure.
this is you're the first person to mention Profi. I feel like I've heard it, but it may have been in your email, so I'm not completely sure.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Almat,
Yes. I
sir,
did.
what is Profi?
Yes, so this is also a very good question. So, like Profi, it's a, well, let's say, it's a kind of a platform for freelancers, who are looking for, like kind of a job, So for example, like it's not only for language learners, but generally, like I would say, like generally speaking, Profi, it's a kind of a web, like it's kind of a web platform where you can find not only like, language tutors, language teachers, but also, for example, if you need some help, like, for example, in your home, if you need some help with your electricity, with your, like some water issues, you can also, like call some plumbers and they can help you, to fix the issues that you have. So it's not only for languages, it can be also, for your domestic purposes, like it can also be for your study purposes, for your job, maybe, babysitting, like it could be anything. So basically people leave like their, I would say, orders. So like they kind of write an order. So for example, they write like whom are they looking for? So for example, they write language tutor. So which language, like English, how many days per week, like 3 times per week, like the price, the location, the conditions and everything, description. So they, after that, they post that order. And here comes our, I would say, like responsibility, like for the tutors, or for the people who are willing to help and to get those orders, so they can enter the platform and they can, like, look for the orders that they want to, like to choose and to help to a particular person. So for example, like for us, like, for me at least, as a language tutor, so for example, I can set up, like in my phone, so for example, these languages, I don't know, like you can also set the price. So what do you want the minimum price to be, for the lessons per hour? So you can just set up all those things. And after that, you'll be looking, like in that list, you have the list of orders. So for example, you can see, for example, someone wants to learn English, like, I don't know, and also the price. So for example, $8 per hour, and also the conditions, which days, what time, and everything. So basically you just look at those and you, for example, you click to an order that you are interested in. And in case everything satisfies you and the customer, you just get to an agreement. So he chooses you, and then you basically start with your like service that you're offering for them.
So do you have to like apply to be on Profi, or is it just like an open kind of platform where you could just go and make a listing?
No, basically, like if you just have a phone number. So basically, like I think I also mentioned, like in the email that I sent to you, like with the like volunteering proposal, that like if you like if you come from post-Soviet Union countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and also like those, that platform is mostly used in those places, because I've never heard people using them here in Europe, even in America, African countries, no, never. So just in those like post-Soviet Union countries. And if you have a phone number, like from those countries, from one of the countries that I've just listed, and if you just like write your phone number, and if you register, then they will send you kind of a verification code, where you can enter the code that you received. And after that, you just set up your profile, like your name, your last name, what do you do, like where you come from, your age, and so on. And then like you basically just ready to get orders from the customers. So it's, I would say in that sense, it's way easier than, I don't know, iTalki or Reply, where you really need to push yourself, like just giving it all, like, in your description, in your video introduction. So yes, that one goes, I would say, way more simple.
Gotcha. So you teach French through Profi. So have you,
Yes, in Profi.
are most of your students from former Soviet Union countries like Russia? Mm-hmm.
Yes, basically, I would even say that, all of them actually come from Kazakhstan, like for now, because the thing is that, as I noticed from Profi, like, I mean, like, it's also possible for you, like, to get students, like, I mean, customers from Russia, from Ukraine. But I think nowadays, because of the, the situation that's happening worldwide, like, it's quite unfortunate, and you cannot really get like customers from, like those mentioned countries, like, because, there, like nowadays there is a difficulty with the payment, because like you cannot receive, like get payments from, Russian customers, and you cannot also send money to them. So that is why, like nowadays there is a, like, let's say, a kind of a problem with the payment method, that you cannot get, like payments from Russian or like, Ukrainian customers. So that is why I would say all of my customers, I would say my clients, my students, because, like being tutors, so they come from Kazakhstan, and some of them are even like abroad. So like, as I mentioned like to you at the beginning of our talk, like my student who's learning Spanish with me, she right now she resides in the UK, in London, but although like she comes from Kazakhstan, so mostly this comes from, yes, from Kazakhstan.
Happy
Customers.
days. Wow. Okay, that's great. I understand.
Yeah.
So just since you speak, since you're able to teach at least 5 languages, have you ever had somebody ask you if they could book a lesson with you and switch between languages, like speak multiple languages? And if not, what would you say to such an offer?
Well, the thing is that, like it's not that I got that kind of offer, that that someone like offered me, oh, like I saw that you speak several languages, so is it possible for us to make a kind of a language exchange by switching from one language to another? So like I didn't really get that specific offer, but like once it happened to me on iTalki, I think like it's been, if I'm not wrong, like maybe 2 weeks, around 2 weeks, that I had a Russian lesson with a girl from Italy. So like she speaks Russian, because it seems like she learned some Russian in her like high school studies, if I'm not wrong. So like I realized that she also speaks several languages. So she spoke Italian, English, Russian, and some Spanish. So like basically, like the aim of our like lesson basically was to learn Russian, to teach Russian, like from my side. But then like, after some time, like she like noted that point that, like I speak several languages, and she also said that she speaks several languages. Then out of a sudden we started to change languages. So from Russian it went to English, then from English to Italian, then also some Spanish. So it was kind of a, let's say, sudden, like, kind of spontaneous language exchange between me and that, my student from Italy. So I think that was the only case when I had real language exchange. But in the rest of the cases, no, I didn't get an offer. And I would accept, in the future, if someone offered me such a proposal. Yes, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Some people in iTalki who teach multiple languages, they charge different rates for different languages. So like if they teach English,
Yes.
they'll usually charge more, and German, they'll charge more than English. English, they'll charge more than Spanish, for example.
Exactly.
Not always, but that's a common thing that I see. And then, there's the difference between the level of the student. Like a lot of people will charge more for beginners than they will for intermediates. So if somebody is like beginner level in Italian or in French, but they're intermediate in Spanish, and they want both, like what would the rate be, right? So
all right, yes.
So I wonder what you think about this, Almat. Do you have any plans on having separate fees for separate languages, or separate fees for different proficiency levels?
Actually, I've really been thinking about this idea, because, this is something that, I've also thought for some time. So basically, like, these days, actually on iTalki, like I have, the same like fees, like, for all the language, even, the same time. So like for 30-minute lessons, 45, 60, 90-minute lessons, basically they have, the same fees, because, like in some sense that kind of makes sense, because like it's been, yes, just 3 weeks since I'm a, like teacher on iTalki. Say, I still have the new teacher status, which by the way, I think disappeared yesterday, because like, I think they gave you only like 3 weeks, like, for that kind of a badge to appear like as a new teacher on your profile. So yes, for now I have the same fees, but actually I thought, and I think I might implement it sometime, to maybe charge like different fees for, different languages, because like what I noticed is that, with languages like nowadays, like Russian especially, and Spanish, like I like get more offers. I mean, like I get more lesson requests than like maybe compared to English, for example. Also for Kazakh, I actually get lots of lesson requests. So this is something that made me think of like, maybe trying to alter the price, of the lessons. And regarding the level, I think this could be also a good idea, because for the beginners it's always like kind of like time consuming, like to give the proper material to explain everything, like in details, like the whether it's grammar rules or like some basic vocabulary. So it takes some more time, and it also like you also need some more, let's say, effort. You need to give some more effort for them to get to higher level, like maybe pre-intermediate level. So this is another thing that one might think of when it
Very
comes
good.
to this.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's sometimes I see people who will raise like English higher than Spanish, but some people will put Spanish higher than English, and sometimes it just
Yes.
depends on what their what their kind of base of students are asking for, right? So
Exactly. Right.
yeah. Okay, cool. So you live in Budapest, my favorite city in the world.
Oh yeah, this
Literally,
is something that
what
surprised me, by the way. Yes, when
yeah,
you said that it's your favorite city.
I
Have you
went
ever been
there.
here before?
Yeah, I went there 3 years ago, and so like
Nice.
I was only there for a few days, so maybe it's no different than just having a bad experience in a great city, right?
Of
But in
course.
this
Yeah.
situation, I had a great experience in Budapest. So to
Sure.
me, it's a great city. I just had a fantastic time. And I
Great.
just want to know a little bit about your experience living there, and if there are ever, I guess, thinking about the time difference between you and your students, like your student in China who's who's
Oh
learning
yes.
Kazakh, for example,
Yeah.
or your student in
Yes.
America. It seems
America.
like in Hungary you would be kind of in like the sweet spot between
Yes.
like the time in Asia
Like
and the
Western
time in
world
North
and
America.
Eastern world. Exactly.
Uh-huh,
Exactly. Exactly. This is something that I actually noticed. And like up to this day, like sometimes it might be kind of confusing that, for example, like let's say like in a coming hour, for example, you have a lesson with someone, like let's say the person is in China right now, but like you might be thinking that maybe he's like he comes from America, because it, like, for example, if you also have lots of lesson requests, like sometimes it's always like recommended for you to organize your like lessons, like your students properly, because you never know what might happen. Actually, once it almost happened to me that I forgot to attend a lesson with my student from, I think it was from Bolivia. Yes, Bolivia. So like in South America. So like the time, yes. So there was time difference there, and yeah. So like originally I thought that like I had a lesson with her, like based on the time difference between here, Hungary, and like China. So that was also something like kind of confusing. So what I do these days is that I try to like like note it in my like phone calendar. So for example, so that I'll be able to see everything in my time zone, and not to mix up the times of the lessons, which might lead to some unwanted repercussions.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's one of those situations you don't know what's going to happen until you kind of go through it, and
Exactly.
hopefully you don't have to go through it.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
right, Almat, that's great. I have check marks all down the list. Before we finish, I'm not in a rush. Do you have anything that that you wanted to discuss or wanted to be asked about, but I forgot to ask you about it?
Actually, I'm not really sure. Like, I think we already talked about lots of things. Actually, like maybe if you want, although like this is like you're the viewing the interview, but like still, I have some questions for you that I want to be recorded so that other people can also like see, like
Wow,
in like
what a way to
yes,
finish this series. I get to sit back in the interview seat.
some yes back interview, because
Yeah,
yeah, I mean
I've probably asked
because
about 200 questions over the past week and a half. So you know what? You could fire away. Yes, go ahead, Almat.
yes, I think so. Yeah, but like in that case, I should have contacted, the other interviews, and maybe getting the questions that they didn't have the chance to ask from you, and kind of like compile and like shoot them to you at
Actually,
the end.
quickly before you ask these questions, I just want to let you know we're going to have a little like after party for this interview. So I'm going to do a
All
live
right.
stream next Saturday
All right.
on YouTube, so people could come in. It's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and people could come in and ask questions. So if any of those other interviewees haven't asked the question, then they could come in, or anybody else. But that was just throwing that out there. That'll be next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. But for now, you're here in front of me, so if you have any questions, you could fire away.
Yes, so I think I should be the pioneer, to start like getting the questions like from me and posing them right now to you. So like basically you mentioned that you've been to Budapest like once 3 years ago, you said. So like how did you like experience, and why did you come? Like was there any particular reason, and how did you find the local life, the people and everything?
Yeah,
so I was just
well,
curious about that.
This will probably be like gag worthy to you. It will probably be like very atrocious, but like I did all the typical tourist things, right? So we went to the hot baths, we went to the ruined bars, right? We went over to Pest and went to the Fisherman's Bastion, which was absolutely beautiful.
That place is amazing.
Aside from that, as odd as it sounds, like I did have a lot of goulash there, but as odd as it sounds, I had very nice like kebab, Greek food, Turkish food, Mediterranean food there. So the food was really nice too. It was affordable. And when we walked around, it really like felt like my quintessential, like my idea of a mixture of the Soviet Union from the pictures we used to see, and like what we know, or at least what I know as a Canadian, as the West, right? So it was kind of a really nice mixture. As I said, I only kind of experienced these hot pockets. I remember going to the University of Budapest, and there was a big protest.
Which university? Do you remember which university that was?
No, I don't remember what it was, what it was called, but it was they were protesting this big environmental thing there, so it was kind of interesting to see a protest. It was peaceful, but it was a protest.
Because the reason why I asked you is like if it's the university that's located just along the river, you remember the river, like Danube. Like if it's located along the river, then probably it might be my university where I currently study.
Exactly. It was definitely that one on the river.
It was definitely that one, I think so, yes. Because I also heard that there were some, also as you said, like kind of environmental meetings, like protests. I think it was that one, yeah. Right.
Yeah, so that's it. I love Budapest. Just got good vibes, man.
And how did you like find it with like people with the language, especially? This is what interests me, because like Hungarian language, their own language. How did you also find that one? What did you think of that?
Well, I tried speaking it a little bit when I was in stores, right? From the little bit of Hungarian that I learned on language apps, and people actually responded to me in Hungarian, which was kind of nice. I don't know what they said. They could have been saying something very rude to me, but they responded to me, which is more than I could say about some other places I've been. But I'd say just about everybody that I ran into spoke English, but
yes, true, especially in Budapest. Yes, in the capital, yes, they do. Although maybe the situation is quite of the opposite, like different in other regions here in Hungary, because most people like who come here for their study purposes or for their job purposes, they also like need English, like for their like personal objectives. So yes, that makes sense that like it went well.
Exactly.
Regarding the language part. Great. So in general, I hope you enjoyed your stay in Hungary. Also, you enjoyed the weather, I hope, because the weather here,
we were there amazing. In May. So it was nice. We were in Barcelona right before then, and Barcelona, the weather was a little bit nicer, but it's all luck of the draw. I mean, I was living in Ireland at the time, and Ireland was like, we lived on the coast, so it was just raining all the time. So everything else felt like a tropical oasis compared to Ireland, which by the way is my favorite country and my favorite people in the world. So nothing against Ireland. Amazing. I love it there, but rainy.
Yes, rainy. Like sometimes you also find those points which don't really satisfy your needs. Like for example, it might be good from, you know, take in all points, like, but they might be, you know, like just one point that might have been better. But you know, this is how it goes with life. You know, you cannot get everything perfect. Just you need to cope up with things that you have.
Totally.
Yeah,
And
but if you
sometimes
come
it's
in
time as
May,
well. Like my first year in Ireland, no problem with the weather because the air is fresh and we lived right beside the Atlantic Ocean. Beautiful, clean, crisp air. But unfortunately, the second year around, COVID hit and it took us 5 months to really get out of Ireland because our flight was canceled time and time again. 6 flights were canceled. So that's when I was looking at the weather. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go back to Canada. Canada actually felt like a hot spot. Like it felt like going to Cuba or something like that. We came back here and at least it was sunny, you know?
Yes. Where do you currently reside in Canada, by the way?
Right beside Toronto. So it's this city called Brampton, Ontario, but it's beside Toronto. But I actually, that's where I'm from, but I actually live on a farm with my girlfriend, 2 hours from Toronto. So it's a big country. I live near Toronto, basically.
Oh, all right. Great. And I suppose like you can also meet people like speaking French, you know, in that region, because I know that, you know, like in Canada, apart from English, like people, especially like, you know, in Quebec zone, like they speak English, like Montreal, like Ottawa. I think Toronto also is somewhere there, if I'm not wrong, with my geography.
So Ottawa, they would speak it a lot more. Actually, I was in Montreal on the weekend because my mom is from there, and all my mom's side of the family is from there. So actually, I grew up going there 2-3 times a year. Unfortunately, you know, Toronto, aside from the immigrants to Toronto and people who I guess are second generation, it's very monolingual, unfortunately, and it's actually very like French is not very common down here. In Canada in general, 80% of Canadians speak English, and then 10% speak both English and French, and then I believe 10% only speak French. So actually it's very, very Anglophone. You know, like it's not a problem that they speak English, but it's difficult if you want to learn French and really immerse yourself. So to answer your question, Almat, unfortunately, if you want to immerse yourself in the French language in Toronto, I'm sure there are places, like for example, I go to a university, York University in Toronto, and there is a campus, like a French speaking campus from what I know, but unfortunately it's really, it wouldn't be like going to certain parts of Europe and really immersing yourself in the language.
Yes. Like if you compare, for example, with France or like Belgium or like, you know,
exactly,
like for example, you know, the countries where the French is spoken, like Luxembourg as well. So I think maybe you would get more exposure, like what you say, than, you know, compared to Canada.
But you could always go to Quebec, and honestly, we have little pockets of Francophone communities all over Canada. It's just that they're in kind of tight-knit communities, aside from Montreal and I think like Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. But again, I'm sure some people are going to watch this and be like, this guy has no idea. So we'll see after.
Yeah, so like if there are, you know, some French, I mean, like, you know, people coming from, you know, like that zone, like Quebec zone, you can also write in the comments what you think, like regarding this part, if Ryan is correct, and if it's not, just, you know, feel free to like correct, but kindly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tell
me the truth.
Great,
exactly.
Great. Yes. And also like I had like another question for you, like which you didn't really clear up, like, because, you know, like most of the time I was kind of like, you know, answering the questions that you had, like about the 6th language that you learned at the same time. So could you maybe please clarify that point a bit more, like what were the languages, when did you start to learn them, and like was it kind of a challenge, like did you have like time, like, you know, like a limit, like to learn the languages? I was also curious about that.
Sure. So I really you know, like just to take it back from the beginning, when I was in school, I did learn French for like 3 or 4 years, but like it was once a
Yes.
week, right? And then I had picked up a
Yes.
little bit of Hindi and Spanish in university, not much. Then
Mhm.
when I went to
Mhm.
Ireland, I began attending weekly lessons for German,
Yes.
French, Spanish, and Irish. And
All
then
right.
I put that to the side for about a year, and then COVID hit. And when the pandemic
Mm.
hit, I started teaching on iTalki right before it hit. So it was kind of
All
perfect
right.
timing. And I fell in love
Yes.
with teaching online. So that made me want to re-begin learning online. So
All right.
let's take it back from the beginning. I began learning
Sure.
French in March of 2020. And then after
All
three
right.
months, actually after 2 months, I began learning Spanish. And then the month
Oh,
after
okay.
that, I started learning German. So at this point, I was taking probably 2 French lessons a week, maybe 2 Spanish lessons a week, and 1 German lesson a week. Like
On
everything I
iTalki?
was making on iTalki was going into my student wallet.
Okay.
I was
All right.
obsessed. And then you know,
Wow.
by last fall, so last fall, so the fall of 2020, I was
Yes.
learning German, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, and Italian. So really a lot of the languages that
Amazing.
you have fallen in love with, right? Um,
Yes.
and yeah, so those were the 6 languages I was learning at the same time and actually conversational in, like I was able to speak them. I've lost a
Amazing.
lot of my skills in these languages, and you know, my goal for this year is really to get my skills for a lot of them back. But I've also
Sure.
dabbled in other languages such as Russian and like Russian, as in I've studied it enough that I understand the phonetic translation for all of the characters, right? So if I
Yes.
see a word, I know what that actually like, what that will sound like. I don't know what it means,
Yes.
probably,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
Arabic, Hindi, yeah. So I kind of just dabble with a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, seems like you have even more passion like than I do. Like when it comes to learning languages, like with so passion, with so obsession. No, like it's actually amazing. Like it's always pleasure to like exchange ideas with people like us. Like other people. Who can really kind of give you some inspiration. Like to move forward. That it's not the end. That there's still a lot to go. That it never ends. Like with your progress you never stop learning in life. It's just infinite, and our only mission is to following and never losing that enthusiasm. So I think this is what we could conclude from your message. Yes,
For
that you
sure.
just said. Yes. And
Absolutely.
so for now, yes, just also I have one more question. So for now, what do you think, how many languages like do you speak, and on what level, and how would you evaluate your language skills?
Oh God, that's tough. So like right now, I'd say probably if you began speaking to me in any language, I'd probably be at like A1 or less, right? But I've I've
Yeah.
found that it's easier to lose a language than to learn a language. But it's also
Yes.
easier to relearn a language than to learn the language in the first place. And that's
Yes,
one thing
exactly.
that is really like anybody who's lost their level in a language but regained it, they'll recognize that. So I mean,
Yes,
right now, a like maybe A2 in French and Spanish, right? I'd say those two are the
right.
core languages, German
Sure.
as well. But if I took 3 lessons in those languages, I think I'd be back up at B1.
Sure.
I'd at least be back up at an intermediate level where I could speak quite fluently, right?
Yes, and
Um,
have some basic conversation
exactly. Yeah,
with people. Yes.
that's right. So
All right. Yeah.
that's where
Uh-huh.
I'm at right now, Almat. Mhm.
Yes, yes. Hopefully, one day we'll also be able to speak, in those languages as well. Like, making maybe like, the kind of a language exchange that, that we've talked about, for example, when you have a student who wants to make a language exchange, in multiple languages. This is something that I find so amazing, like trying to like switch just in 1 second from one language to another, without even realizing it. You're just speaking and automatically move on with another language. I just find something inexplicable, like how human brain can work on that, on that level, like when it's able to like just without realizing it, changing from one language to another. It's just something amazing.
Yes, beautiful.
all
Yeah,
the
like code
experience.
switching and translanguaging. I see it a lot here in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, among the
Yes,
Punjabi population, the Hindi speaking population, like many people from South Asia, they're able to kind of switch back and forth like nothing, right? And even, you know, even if we
exactly.
think about the French speaking populations, as I said, they're all around Canada. And actually a
Right.
lot
Yeah.
of Ontario, including Ottawa, so a lot of my part of Canada, which is beside Quebec, they have these communities too, and I've witnessed some of them code switching, and it's just amazing, you know. So when
Exactly,
I
Alexander.
improve my level in some of these languages, I'll invite you back here, sir, and then I'll let you
Sure,
ask
sure,
me a
sure,
couple
sure.
questions in these languages.
Sure. Of course. Like I'm waiting, for that part as well. Sure.
That's beautiful. All right. If anybody would like to book a lesson in any of the plethora of languages that Almat teaches, please book a lesson with him. I'm putting his link in the box below. I know that you just lost your new teacher badge, but I'm sure that's not going to hold you back. So all the best of luck. Do you have
Thank
any
you so
last
much. Bye.
things to say before we call it a day today?
Basically, I think not really. Like maybe like there might be some more questions, but I think like it's better maybe to lead them, like for our meeting, like that you mentioned just on next Saturday, with all the from the horse mouth interviews that you've had. And I think like at that time I'll also maybe, come up with some more questions, gather and trying to, let's say, make you talk like another time in the
Yeah.
meeting.
That's all right. I love to talk. No problem. We've been talking for like an hour and I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. So
Yeah,
come
for
on
an
by,
eternity, me too.
ask whichever questions you'd like, and I'll see you
Sure.
then. All right, Almat.
Sure. All right. Thank you,
Take
Ryan,
care.
again, and see you next time. Stay
All right.
safe.
See you. Bye.
Bye.